Physicians generally care about two things: money and time. That's the two things. If you can show them any way they can make more money or any way they can have more time, those are the things they care about. So EMR has the opportunity to bring them that, make them more efficient, more profitable, and also give them better quality of life and better ability to go coach their kids' baseball team. That's what most of them are interested in. So, that's how we try to present it to them in a very realistic, look, this is what you're taking on. It involves training. You have to go to the training. You have to commit to the training. And when you get frustrated with it, you just can't toss the tablet out the window and go back to your charts and dictation. You've got to be committed to it. So
let's talk about that for a minute, because there's some, I think there's some myths or misconceptions about you can live in both worlds. You can, do a little paper, do a little electronic medical record, kind of have a hybrid, and let some of the group, if they aren't wholeheartedly committed to electronic medical records, let part of the group do paper and part of them do electronic medical records. But that just doesn't work, does it?
Well, in my opinion, it's kind of like you can't be a little bit pregnant. You can either decide that you're going to do it or you're not going to do it. Now, the only exceptions I've seen, if you've got a physician that's very near retirement and first of all, the older physicians tend to say, well, let the young guys pay for it.
Right.
I don't want to pay for it. I'm not going to be here to take advantage of it. So, right. And I think certainly the stimulus package has created an enormous level of interest. I mean, and I tell practices all the time, if you're doing it just for the stimulus money, you're making a mistake. In other words, do it for the merits that it has, and look at that as the icing on the cake or the gravy or whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. But that's how I try to position it with them and say, look, this is something that's I tell them all the time, it's a marriage, not a date. Okay, so this is a real commitment that you're making. And what I've seen some practices do is fail miserably at it, usually again on the beginning from a lack of commitment by the physicians to really want to do it. And so where a practice can find themselves if they try to adopt a hybrid model like you talked about, they can find themselves actually in a worse place. Now they've spent the money and they're not getting the efficiencies
right.
and the staff reductions and the coding improvements and all the things that the EMRs can bring as return on investment.
They can essentially almost double the workload without getting any benefit.
Yeah, and they've spent the money to buy it on top of that.
And the money on top of that.
It's kind of they can find themselves in a worse place. So that's the reason I spend so much time on the front end counseling groups to say, you've got to make sure your group is committed to doing this when you decide to do it, because picking the software will be the easiest thing you're going to do. The rest of it is what's hard. You know what I mean?
Let's talk about implementation schedule, because depending on the vendors' timing and their backlog, you have a pretty wide range of implementation schedules. What do you think is a practical way to roll this thing out? From the day that you say, you know what, we're committed, it's time for us to go and get with it, let's get on this thing, to the point where it's actually in the practice and you're using it?
Well, this is what I think, and I think in order to look at it the right way, you kind of have to back up just a little and see where the practice is today. So if they're on an antiquated billing system, which is very common, the first thing they're going to have to face is the possibility that they're really going to have to also change their practice management system in order to go to the
new. Because sometimes they just go hand in hand.
Right, and more and more of the vendors now are building the integrated solution. So if you want to go to their solution, you pretty much have to commit to go to the whole solution. It makes sense. So the first step I tell people is, this is an elephant. You eat it a bite at a time. You do not try to do this whole thing at once. The only time that we work with practices who will implement a new practice management and EMR system at the same time is new practices, brand new practices starting up who just really don't ever want to start with a chart. So in other words, why ever have one to begin with? So